I was in the war room when the signal came through. Sharp, cold, and final. The Terran High Command seal flickered on every screen in the room, and even the most battle-hardened men fell silent. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. I could feel sweat prickling under my uniform collar as the message began to play. Effective immediately, the planet Earth severs all diplomatic, economic, and military ties with the Galactic Council. The voice was Admiral Grant, head of Terran Defense, a man whose name alone could unsettle entire fleets. There was no hesitation in his tone, no window left for negotiation. Any Council vessels entering Terran space will be treated as hostile. All Earth-based assets in Council territory are recalled. This is not a negotiation. This is final. The room was still. The silence wasn't one of shock. It was one of grim understanding. We all knew this had been building for years. The backdoor deals, the corrupt Council edicts, the human lives sacrificed for the so-called greater galactic good. I had seen it firsthand. On Velthar 9, when the Council ordered us to stand down while a human colony was raided by Karathi pirates funded by Council members themselves, I still remembered the screams over open comms. For years, Earth had played nice, paid the Council's endless tariffs, sent our best scientists to their joint research programs, only to see them disappear into black budget labs, provided soldiers for their wars, ships for their armadas, always treated as lesser. They wanted Earth for its resources, its innovation, its ferocity, but they never wanted us as equals. Now, finally, we had stopped pretending. The transmission ended. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted, officers rushing to terminals, encrypted channels flaring to life, fleet commanders barking orders. I stood, my mind racing. Commander David Strain, 1st Fleet Intelligence. My job was to monitor enemy movements, predict threats. But this was no longer theoretical. "Sir," my aide Lieutenant Vega said, breathless, "we're already getting Council fleet chatter. They're panicking." "Patch it through," I ordered. Static, then overlapping voices. "Earth's mad. If they blockade the Corthium routes, half the inner systems will collapse. We need to secure their jump gates now before they lock them out. Human Cyber Division is years ahead. We can't let them go rogue. Without Earth's fleets, the Outer Rim is defenseless against the Sharn incursions." I allowed myself a grim smile. Good, let them panic. The truth was, Earth no longer needed the Council. Our jump technology was more advanced. Our AI warships were unmatched. Our soldiers had fought and bled across the galaxy, and learned from every battle. We'd been preparing for this moment, quietly, relentlessly. Suddenly my console pinged. Priority alert. Vega's face went pale. "Commander, Council fleets are mobilizing. 3 task forces moving toward Sol." It had begun. I keyed the fleet channel. "This is Commander Strain. Battle stations. Prepare all fleets for defensive operations. No one enters Sol." Another ping. Civilian panic reports flooding in from Allied systems. Earth's trade embargo was already freezing entire supply chains. Starports in the inner systems were shut down. Council economies were spiraling. The universe had always thought of Earth as a volatile ally, but they'd never imagined us as an enemy. They were about to learn. As the alarms echoed through the station, I looked out at the stars, feeling a strange sense of calm beneath the storm. This wasn't just Earth's fight anymore. It was the beginning of a new war, and this time, we weren't fighting for approval. We were fighting for our place in the galaxy, on our terms. The command deck buzzed with controlled chaos. Orders barked across the channels. Confirmation lights blinked red, yellow, red again. I could feel the station's hum, an old, worn vibration, like the heartbeat of a soldier too long in battle but still standing. Vega shoved another tablet into my hand, her face grim. "Confirmed. Council Task Forces 1, 3 and 7 mobilized. Fast attack formations. They've diverted from standard lanes, masking their approach. I scrolled through the intercepted data. Fleet compositions, vector predictions, battleships, carriers, escort wings, all of it aimed at us. All of it authorized under peace enforcement, the Council's favorite euphemism for a military crackdown. They're not coming to negotiate, Vega added quietly, as if it needed saying. I grunted. They never were. At the center of the room, the holographic display flared to life. Earth at the center, a web of tactical overlays spinning out. Red marks littered the outer perimeter, Council fleet signatures. Sol Defense was already maneuvering. The Council wasn't wasting time. Good. Neither were we. I stepped closer to the table, voice steady. Signal all units. Phase 1 lockdown initiated. I want the home fleet on intercept trajectories. Formation Victor 3. Vega saluted sharply, already relaying the command. Across the deck, officers moved like clockwork. These weren't green recruits or bureaucratic lapdogs like the Council's forces. These were Terran military, men and women forged in the dirt and blood of 100 worlds the Council didn't even bother to remember. I tapped into the secure line to the High Command. Strain here, I began. Council fleets are 3 hours out from Sol perimeter. Estimates suggest first engagement within 5. The hologram flickered. Admiral Grant's stern, hard-bitten face appeared. The years hadn't been kind to him. Deep lines carved into his skin, eyes like steel traps. But there was no mistaking the strength behind his glare. Understood, Commander, Grant said. Execute as planned, no quarter. I nodded, knowing full well what that meant. No warnings, no diplomacy, no surrender. Let the Council taste the fury they'd cultivated all these years. 3 hours later, I stood on the bridge of the TSS Revenant, Earth's most advanced warship, a carrier dreadnought capable of fielding an entire fleet on its own. Around me, crews manned stations, fingers dancing across control panels, faces set with the calm of those who had already made peace with death. First contact in 20 minutes, Vega reported. She hadn't left my side, loyal to the core. Enemy formation split. They're trying to flank around Neptune. Predictable. The Council had grown complacent over the decades, trusting their size and numbers to win wars. They didn't understand that Earth had learned to fight smarter, harder, dirtier if need be. They thought humans could be broken like any other subject race. They were wrong. Deploy wolves. 1 through 5 to the flanks, I said. Staggered advance. Pin the Council's left wing against Neptune's gravity well. And the main fleet? I allowed myself the faintest smile. They're walking into a minefield. Earth's defense wasn't just built on ships and guns. It was built on the grim acknowledgement that when the time came, the galaxy wouldn't fight fair, and neither would we. Hundreds of autonomous weapon platforms drifted in deep space, cloaked, silent, waiting. The Council fleets wouldn't even see them until it was too late. The minutes dragged by, a tense, heavy waiting. I found myself staring at the holographic projection of Earth, a tiny blue marble amid the stars. Fragile-looking, vulnerable. But that was the old Earth. This Earth had teeth. Commander, Vega called out sharply. Enemy fleet breaching the perimeter. They're moving fast. On screen. The main display bloomed to life, and there they were. Sleek, gleaming Council warships, lined up in perfect formations. Impressive, if you liked your battles choreographed like a parade. I leaned forward, feeling the tension coil in my gut. Begin. The first Council ships hit the minefield head-on. 1 second, they were gliding forward with smug precision. The next, chaos. Explosions tore through the void, fireballs blossoming silently in the black. Hulls crumpled, disintegrated, spun out of control. Council formations scattered, desperate to avoid the unseen death enveloping them. Bridge officers cheered, some pounding their fists on consoles. I raised a hand, silencing them. This wasn't victory yet. This was only the first punch. "Push the advantage," I said, voice cold. "All squadrons engage at will." The Revenant shuddered as it launched its first wave, sleek, deadly fighters roaring out of the hangars, forming into tight kill groups. They plunged into the fray like a swarm of angry hornets, ripping into the disorganized council ships with ruthless precision. Vega grinned, a rare crack in her professional mask. "They're not used to losing. Then let's make it a habit." An hour into the battle, the Council's fleet was in shambles. Half their ships were wrecks or fleeing, the other half trapped, desperately trying to regroup. I should have felt triumph. I should have felt relief. But all I felt was a deep, simmering anger. Because it never should have come to this. We had tried. God, we had tried to build something better, something unified. Earth had given everything to the Council, our resources, our people, our trust. And they had spat on it, used us, mocked us, bled us dry while calling it partnership. Now the universe was learning the price of that betrayal. "Incoming transmission," Vega said, her voice sharpening. "From the Council flagship." I arched an eyebrow. Bold of them, given their situation. "Put it through." The screen flickered again, and a familiar face appeared. High Consul Journey, a Draxian with the thin, reedy features of his species and the calculating eyes of a man who'd made a career out of selling others' blood for his own gain. "Commander Strain," he began, oozing false calm. "Surely we can discuss terms. There's no need for further bloodshed." I stared at him, long and hard. "You sent a fleet to Sol armed to the teeth. You expected surrender. You planned for occupation." Journey offered a tight smile. "Misunderstandings, Commander. Nothing that cannot be mended with diplomacy. Humanity is valued, respected." "Respected," I echoed, tasting the word like poison. "Like you respected the colonies you let burn, the soldiers you left to die, the treaties you broke the moment they stopped serving you." The Consul's smile faltered. "You've made your point," he said stiffly. "But consider what you're throwing away. Isolation will leave Earth vulnerable. Trade will collapse. You can't survive alone." Vega stiffened beside me, her hands balling into fists. I didn't blame her. I stepped closer to the screen, voice low and steady. "We survived the Terran collapse. We survived the First Sharn War. We survived your Council's peacekeeping missions. You think we can't survive you?" Journey said nothing. I leaned in. "This is the last transmission you'll receive from Sol. Get out of our system. Don't come back." And then I cut the line. The battle didn't last much longer. The Council fleets, demoralized and bloodied, began their retreat. Not a tactical withdrawal, a full rout. Earth's forces pursued just far enough to make it clear. This wasn't a one-time defiance. This was a severance, permanent, total. By the time the last Council warship blinked out of sensor range, the Revenant's bridge erupted in cheers. But I remained silent, watching the stars, feeling the weight of what we had just done. We hadn't just fought a battle. We had declared war on the galaxy itself. Vega approached, her expression more serious now. "Commander, reports coming in from Allied systems. Panic. Trade routes are collapsing. Some factions are calling for war. Others—" She hesitated. "Others are asking to join us." I nodded slowly. The galaxy was breaking apart, fragmenting under the pressure we'd applied. Some would hate us, some would fear us. A few would rally to our side. It didn't matter. We would stand alone if we had to. "Start vetting the offers," I said. No alliances, no treaties. If they want to stand with Earth, they do it by our terms." "Understood, sir." She moved off to relay the orders, leaving me once again staring at the silent, indifferent stars. For the first time in centuries, Earth was free. No council, no overlords, no chains. The galaxy would hate us for it. Let them. The aftermath was uglier than the battle. Less than 12 hours after the council fleets retreated, the galaxy had begun tearing itself apart. Reports streamed in non-stop. Pirate factions attacking unprotected trade convoys, border skirmishes erupting between old rivals, planetary governments declaring unilateral independence. The Council's grip was unraveling faster than anyone had predicted. They'd built an empire on exploitation and forced unity. And when Earth pulled the keystone out of the arch, the whole structure began to collapse. I was back aboard Station Bastion, Earth's primary military command hub in Sol orbit. The Revenant was on standby, fully armed, crews ready, but for now the war was political, as much as it was military. Vega met me in the corridor, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion etched into her features. We hadn't slept in over a day. Nobody had. "Council communications are deteriorating," she reported briskly. "Multiple factions are refusing to obey High Consul Jernai's directives. Valerian Protectorate just cut ties outright." I raised an eyebrow. The Valerians had been Council lapdogs for decades, vicious enforcers who'd done the Council's dirty work in the outer systems. If even they were pulling back, the fracture ran deep. "And on our side?" Vega hesitated, then handed me a slate. "Internal dissent. Civilian sectors are in panic. Some business leaders are screaming for reinstatement of trade agreements. EarthGov's financial sectors are strained." Of course they were. The merchant class had grown fat under Council trade. They never cared about sovereignty, only profits. I felt a sour taste rise in my mouth. "Let them scream," I said coldly. "We won't crawl back." She gave a short nod, eyes flickering with a trace of approval. "There's more. Colonial governors are divided. Mars and Europa stand firm. Titan, not so much." Titan. Always a nest of corporate parasites and power-hungry cowards. I narrowed my eyes. "Any signs of open defection?" Vega's lips pressed thin. "They've opened economic dialogue with independent council elements," which meant they were hedging bets, preparing to sell Earth out if the winds turned. I clenched the slate until the plastic creaked. Bastards. An hour later, I was seated at the High Command briefing, Grant at the head of the table, flanked by Fleet Admiral Holt and Intelligence Chief Renar. Holt was an old warhorse, his face a roadmap of old scars, one eye replaced with a gleaming cybernetic implant. Renar was leaner, more cerebral, the mind behind much of Earth's clandestine war machine. "We hold the Sol perimeter," Holt was saying, voice a gravelly growl. "Council's too fractured to mount another immediate assault." "But fractures breed danger," Renar countered smoothly. "The power vacuum is drawing in opportunists, rogue fleets, mercenary bands, and then there's the internal risk." Grant looked at me. "Strain. Your assessment?" I didn't hesitate. "We're strong now, but vulnerable. The Council's collapse will spawn chaos. Factions will test us. Worse, our own traitors may strike from within." I tossed the slate on the table. "Titan's already negotiating with Council loyalists. If we don't move decisively, others will follow." Grant's expression darkened. "And your recommendation?" I met his gaze without blinking. "Crush dissent, swiftly, publicly. We can't afford weakness." The room was silent for a moment. Then Holt barked a dry laugh. "I like him." Grant's mouth twitched in the faintest ghost of a smile. "Good. Then you'll lead the operation?" 6 hours later, I was aboard the TSS Fury, a fast attack cruiser bound for Titan. No diplomatic envoy, no negotiations. This was an enforcement action. Show of strength, surgical. Final. Vega accompanied me, of course. She'd refused to remain on Bastion. Not that I'd argued. You didn't leave loyal wolves behind when going into enemy territory. As we neared Titan, encrypted channels lit up with panicked chatter. Corporate security fleets scrambled into defensive posture. Planetary governors issued weak demands for dialogue. They'd never believed Earth would dare strike one of its own colonies. They were about to learn. We deployed at dawn cycle. The Fury's railguns took out Titan's orbital defense platforms in under 3 minutes. No warning shots, no hesitation. By the time I led the assault teams onto the surface, resistance was already crumbling. Vega and I breached the governor's palace personally, storming past security droids, cutting through layers of corporate guards. The so-called Governor Luthen was a soft, bloated man with trembling hands and slick words. "Commander Strain, this is madness," he stammered as we entered the grand chamber, weapons drawn. "Earth can't survive alone. The Council—" I cut him off with a single shot. A pulse round to the chest. Clean. Final. The guards froze. The remaining counselors dropped their weapons without protest. I stepped over the corpse, addressing the assembled staff. "Titan belongs to Earth," I said coldly. "Not to profiteers, not to traitors. Spread the word." We left the palace burning behind us. By midday, Titan was under martial law. Corporate assets seized, dissenters arrested. The message broadcast across the system: no betrayal, no compromise. Back aboard Bastion, the reaction was immediate. Mars doubled down on its allegiance. Europa reaffirmed loyalty. Even wavering colonies on Ganymede and Callisto pledged open support. Fear worked. So did strength. But the war was far from over. 2 days later, an encrypted signal arrived. Intercepted from deep space. Origin unknown. Vega brought it to me, her face pale. "It's a warning," she said. "From an old contact in the frontier fleets." She played the recording, a distorted voice, thick with static. "They're coming. Not Council, something worse. The Zharn have seen Earth's defiance. They smell blood. Prepare." I sat back, heart pounding. The Zharn, the Council's old boogeyman, ruthless, predatory, alien war fleets that had once brought the galaxy to its knees. The only thing that had held them back was the Council's united front, a front that no longer existed. Now they saw Earth standing alone. And they were coming. The stars had always been a hostile place, but now they were a battlefield. I hadn't slept in 2 days. There wasn't time. The Zharn were coming. We didn't know how big the fleet was, or when it would strike. The Zharn didn't send diplomats. They didn't posture or threaten. They hunted, and they always struck hard, fast, without warning. That intercepted message had lit a fire under every military command from Mars to Neptune. For all the Council's arrogance, they had feared the Zharn. Entire sectors had been lost during the first Zharn War. Billions dead. And now Earth stood without allies, without backup. But we wouldn't run. We'd burned that option the day we severed ties with the Council. The command deck of Station Bastion buzzed with grim purpose. Engineers worked around the clock to reinforce defensive platforms. Orbital shipyards had canceled all civilian work. Every available hull was being converted for war. I stood at the center of the tactical hub, surrounded by shifting holomaps of the outer Sol system. New sensor nets had gone live. Long-range arrays stretching from the edge of Pluto's orbit to Saturn's moons. No one spoke of defeat, but there was no bravado either. We knew what was coming. Vega approached, her expression hard. "New intel," she said, handing me a slate. "Recon drones picked up movement in the outer fringe, suspected Zharn signatures." I scanned the data, spiked energy readings, distortions in subspace, classic signs of Zharn warforms in transit. I exhaled slowly. "How long?" She hesitated. "Estimate, 6 days, maybe less." So soon. Grant arrived moments later, his face carved from stone. "You've seen the intel?" I nodded. He looked me dead in the eye. "I want Sol turned into a fortress. No fallback, no retreat." I straightened. "It will be..." For the next 3 days, Earth became a war machine. Civilian traffic was locked down. Every spaceport shifted to military control. Orbital yards launched a constant stream of gun platforms and automated drones. The home fleet, nearly 200 capital ships, was redeployed into layered defensive lines around Earth and Mars. We activated the Ghost Net, hundreds of stealth mines seated across the system, linked to AI hunter-killers. Even the old Terran nuclear arsenals, long mothballed, were rearmed and integrated into planetary defense grids. And through it all, the tension built. We knew what the Zharn were capable of. They didn't fight like the Council's polished armadas. Zharn ships weren't even fully mechanical. They were living constructs, organic metal hybrids grown for war, faster and deadlier than anything else in known space. Their weapons didn't disable, they annihilated. By day 4, the first panic riots broke out on Earth. Government centers were attacked. Civilians stormed stockpiles. Corporations tried to hoard evacuation transports. I crushed it without mercy. Martial law was declared planet-wide. Dissident leaders were arrested. Corporate assets seized. Vega coordinated the sweeps, her face cold and focused. "We can't afford weakness now," she said after one operation. Blood stained her fatigues. Her pistol smoked faintly at her side. I nodded grimly. Let them hate us, so long as they survive. On the 5th day, they arrived. The first sign was the sensor grid going dark. Then came the comm blackouts. Entire outposts along the Kuiper Belt cut off mid-transmission. Then, the shadows. Long-range visual scans caught the first glimpse. Vast, nightmarish forms drifting toward Sol space. Not ships in the human sense. Things. Black armored leviathans, bristling with alien weapons, trailing clouds of nanite spores that devoured everything in their path. No formation, no signal. Just an unstoppable advance. Grant summoned me and the other senior commanders to Bastion's war room. The holomap was bleak, red markers spreading across the outer perimeter. Renar gave the intel brief. At least 6 primary Zharn war forms confirmed. Unknown number of secondary assets. Estimated strength, comparable to the original Zharn incursions during the Council War. He paused grimly. And we faced them alone. Grant's gaze swept the table. "Any word from the Council?" Renar's mouth twisted. "Silence. They're too busy tearing each other apart." "Of course. Cowards. They'd abandoned Earth, and now they'd abandoned the entire inner galaxy." Grant looked at me. "Strain, your recommendation?" I didn't hesitate. "We hold. No fallback. If they breach Earth's defenses, there won't be anything left to retreat to." Silence. Then Holt grinned. "Finally. A real fight." 12 hours later, the first wave hit. It began at Neptune's orbit. Automated platforms went offline in seconds. Zharn spores swarmed through the outer defenses, disassembling satellites and drones mid-flight. Then the fleet struck. Revenant led the charge, flanked by Earth's finest warships. We met the Zharn head-on in the black. Space became a slaughterhouse. Human weapons hammered the enemy, railguns tearing through organic hulls, plasma lances searing through armor. The Zharn twisted and regenerated, lashing back with particle streams and clouds of devouring nanites. Entire council fleets had died trying to stop them. But Earth fought differently. We'd learned from every past war. We'd adapted. The Revenant's AI, Sovereign, coordinated the battle. "Enemy adapting to railgun patterns," Sovereign reported mid-engagement. "Initiate attack variant Delta 7. "Do it," I ordered. We shifted tactics constantly, changing formation, staggering weapons, deploying AI-controlled decoys. The Jarn weren't invincible. You just had to fight smarter, dirtier. The battle raged for hours. I watched as the TSS Valiant rammed a Jarn warform head-on, detonating its reactor in a blinding antimatter burst. No survivors, but they took the monster with them. All across the fleet, similar sacrifices unfolded. We gave ground, but slowly, measured. Then a priority alert screamed across my console. "Commander!" Vega shouted. "New signatures! Multiple Jarn flanking forces detected!" A second wave. They were adapting too. I slammed a fist on the comm panel. "Reroute GhostNet to intercept. Bring in Mars Defense Fleet. Hold the line." As ships burned around us, Vega glanced my way. Her voice was low, fierce. "They think we'll break." I met her eyes. "They're wrong." The Jarn's second wave didn't stop. If anything, it hit harder than the first. For 12 straight hours, we fought them in the dark between Mars and Jupiter. The battle lines were fluid, chaotic. No static fronts. This was a knife fight across millions of kilometers of space. The Mars Defense Fleet joined the fray. Old war horses, heavily armored but slower than our frontline ships. They held the middle ground, while Revenant and the strike groups kept flanking and bleeding the enemy. But even so, losses mounted. I watched from the Revenant's bridge as the TSS Grendel, a Mars dreadnought, took a Jarn energy lance straight through its core. The ship split in two. No time for lifeboats, no survivors. More icons on my tactical board blinked red, then black. We were winning battles, but the cost was brutal. Vega stalked over, her face drawn and pale beneath her helmet. "Commander, Sovereign reports structural breaches on Deck 4. Casualties mounting. We're pushing the limits." I nodded. "We hold. No fallback." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She knew. By hour 15, we were down to 65% fleet strength. And then, the Jarn changed tactics. Without warning, the second wave split. Small, fast Jarn craft veering off toward Earth's core worlds. Mars, Luna, Earth itself. It wasn't just brute force anymore. It was a raid, decapitation strike. Vega cursed low under her breath. "They're trying to bypass us. Hit civilian centers." I punched up the command line to High Command. "Strain to Bastion. Jarn forces fragmenting. Enemy strike wings headed for inner planets." Grant's grim voice came back almost instantly. "We see it. Rerouting Luna Guard and Earth defense wings. You hold the flank. Hold the flank, alone." I switched to Revenant fleet-wide. "All units. Defensive net priority. Shield the corridor. Do not let them through." I heard the affirmatives, the calm, battle-hardened voices of Terran fleet captains who had seen too many wars to be rattled now. And then we turned to face the new wave. The fighting shifted from brutal to savage. The Jarn strike craft were smaller but faster, living weapons that darted through our formations, targeting engines, reactors, life support. Revenant shuddered under repeated impacts. Sovereign kept pace, cycling emergency patches and damage control routines. But there was no rest. Every second, more calls came in. Mars colonies under attack. Luna orbital stations breached. Earth preparing for surface landings. By hour 18, exhaustion blurred everything. I hadn't left the bridge. Neither had Vega. Her face was smeared with grease and blood, not her own. She handed me another slate. Surface reports from Earth. I scanned them. The Jarn had made it through. A few strike ships had evaded the gauntlet and crash-landed in the oceans and in isolated zones across Europe, Asia, and North America. Ground war had begun. Grant's order came down seconds later. "Strain, you're relieved. Get to Earth. We need you planet-side." I hesitated, leaving the Revenant mid-battle, grated every instinct I had. But the meaning was clear. If Earth fell, the rest didn't matter. I met Vega's eyes. "You're with me?" She gave a tight nod. No hesitation. An hour later, we touched down outside London Arcology. Smoke choked the sky. The city's energy grid flickered erratically. As our gunship descended, I caught glimpses of black, chitin-armored Jarn forms moving through the lower levels, engaged in vicious running battles with Earth's ground forces. The Council had always insisted humanity was too primitive for real planetary defense. They were about to see how wrong they'd been. Our boots hit the ground, weapons hot. Vega led the point squad through the shattered outer barricades. Every corridor reeked of ozone and blood. Civilians huddled in secure zones, terrified, but not broken. The soldiers, old veterans, young conscripts, even civilian militia, fought with pure fury. They weren't just defending territory. They were defending their home. I took command of the local defense net. "Seal the lower sectors. No retreats. If it moves, you kill it." The fighting was brutal. Sharn warforms moved like nightmares. Too fast, too strong. But they bled. They burned. And we made them pay for every inch. In one corridor, we found a civilian convoy pinned down, a Jarn pack tearing through the escort teams. Without waiting, Vega charged in. 3 pulse shots. 1 Sharn dropped. I covered her, ripping into another with sustained fire. When the last one fell, the civilians stared at us in shock. "Stay together," Vega told them flatly. "Move toward Sector 7. No delays." They obeyed. No one argued with soldiers who looked like they'd crawled straight out of hell. We fought for 6 straight hours, cleared one sector, then another. No sleep, no food, just the mission. By the time we reached the central fusion complex, the Jarn had begun to retreat. They'd bled too much here, and Earth wasn't finished yet. When the last enemy signal flickered out, the defenders of London Arcology gathered, battered, filthy, alive. I stood on the upper rampart, staring out at the burning sky. Vega came to stand beside me, weapons still hot. "That was just the first hit," she said softly. I nodded. "They'll come again." Back on Bastion, the reports poured in. Every inner planet had been hit, some harder than others, billions dead, cities in ruins. But Earth still stood. And now the question hung over us all. How long could we stand alone? Grant called us into a new council the next morning. He looked every year of his age now, eyes red-rimmed, face drawn, but his voice was iron. "They won't stop," he said flatly. "If we stay reactive, they'll bleed us dry." He looked at me. "Strain. Options?" I didn't hesitate. "Counterstrike." Silence in the room. Then Holt leaned forward, a wolf's grin spreading. "Finally. About damn time." Renar spoke next. "We've mapped potential Sharn hive fleets beyond the Sol boundary. Attacking will be risky." I met his gaze. "Not attacking is suicide?" Grant gave a slow nod. "Then we go on the offensive." He looked straight at me. "You'll lead it." Later, in the war room, Vega stood beside me as we studied the strike plans. "You really think we can take the fight to them?" she asked quietly. I looked at her. We have no choice. Because the truth was brutal and simple. If we didn't break the Jarn first, they would break us. We launched within 48 hours. There wasn't time for a long campaign plan. There wasn't time for perfect logistics or careful diplomacy. The Jarn didn't wait. And neither would we. High Command authorized Operation Iron Fist, Earth's first full-scale counterstrike beyond Sol space. No Council allies, no backup, just Terran steel and blood. Our objective? Destroy Sharn staging hives beyond Pluto's orbit. Hit them before they could regroup and send a third wave. The risks were colossal, But the alternative was worse, a slow death for Earth. I stood in Bastion's main hangar as the Revenant prepared to deploy again. Around me, thousands of soldiers, pilots, engineers, all moving with the cold, focused energy of people who knew this might be their last mission. Vega approached, geared up in full battle armor. She handed me my helmet. "You sure about this?" she asked, voice low. I looked at her. No. I meant it. But we didn't have the luxury of certainty. The Revenant's engines burned harder than they'd ever been pushed, driving us deep into the black, past the old Council trade routes, past abandoned relay stations, into the wild, frozen void where the Council had always feared to go. Scout drones went first, and most didn't come back. The few that did sent images that made even hardened fleet veterans pause. Sharn hive fleets, miles-long organic constructs drifting through space, feeding on asteroid fields, converting raw matter into more war forms. Hive structures like cancerous growths across entire moons. And worse, signals, patterns, coordinated movements. The Sharn weren't just random predators anymore. They were preparing for a full invasion. 3 days into transit, we reached the edge of Sharn territory. Sensors began spiking. Shadows moved against the stars. I gathered my strike captains in the Revenant's command bay. "This is no line battle," I told them. "No fixed fronts. We're going in hard and fast. Burn every hive, every ship. No prisoners." I looked around the room, grim, hard faces staring back. No questions, no hesitation. They knew what was at stake. Vega was at my side after the briefing. "Think the Council's even watching this?" I laughed, cold, bitter. "They'll watch from behind their fortresses and pray we win. Because if we failed, the Sharn wouldn't stop at Earth. They'd consume the entire inner galaxy, and the Council knew it. The battle began before we even reached the first hive. Sharn interceptors, living missiles with claws and teeth, swarmed us at the system boundary. The Revenant's AI sovereign coordinated defense. Cycling turrets, launching drone screens, cutting down wave after wave. But they just kept coming. "Multiple breaches on outer decks," one of the bridge officers shouted. I grabbed the comm. "Lockdown protocols, seal all compromised sectors." Vega was already moving, leading counter-assault teams through the lower decks. I trusted her to handle it. I had to focus on the bigger fight. When we finally reached the first hive, it was worse than the scans had suggested. A dead moon, split open and hollowed out, filled with pulsing organic structures, vast factories growing new Sharn war forms by the thousands. The enemy swarmed us instantly, but we'd come prepared. "All strike wings, deploy!" I ordered. Hundreds of Terran fighters screamed from the Revenant's hangars, streaking toward the hive. Railgun bombardment followed, kinetic rounds slamming into the hive, tearing through the outer shells. But the Sharn adapted fast, regrowing armor, launching counterattacks. We pressed the assault. Vega's voice crackled over comms from her strike team. "Main hive tunnels breached, engaged heavy resistance, moving to core." I gritted my teeth. "Stay on target." I launched with the second assault wave. Boots on the hive itself, leading a strike team through the hellscape of the Sharn nest. Every step was a nightmare. Organic walls pulsing, acidic vapors, war forms bursting from the ground. We fought through it all. Pulse rifles blazing, grenades clearing swarms. Vega's team linked up with mine at the inner core. We planted fusion warheads on the central biomass nodes, the things feeding the entire hive. Extraction was a bloodbath. Half my squad was lost fighting clear. But we made it. And when the fusion charges detonated, the hive burned. From orbit, the explosion looked like a second sun, the first Terran victory against the Sharn. But there was no time to celebrate. Sovereign pinged an emergency alert even before the last shockwave faded. "Commander, new contacts. Major Sharn fleet inbound. Estimated arrival, 4 hours. They were reacting, fast, and they were bringing everything. High Command wanted to pull back, but I overrode the order. I gathered my captains again. We hold here. 1 win isn't enough. We break them, or they keep coming forever. Vega stood at my shoulder. They'll hit us hard. I nodded. Good. We'll hit back harder. 4 hours later, the Jarn fleet arrived. I fought many battles, none like this. Thousands of Sharn constructs, from swarm fighters to leviathans bigger than any Terran ship. They didn't form neat lines. They surged like a tidal wave of living metal. Revenant took point. Sovereign unleashed every weapon we had, railguns, plasma, antimatter warheads. Entire enemy waves burned, but more kept coming. Mars fleet reinforcements arrived mid-battle, tipping the balance just enough to hold the line. For hours, space was a constant inferno. No safe zones, no rear lines, just kill or die. At one point, a Jarn Leviathan rammed the Revenant, breaching decks, flooding them with war forms. I led the counter-assault myself, shotgun in hand, armor slick with ichor. By the time we cleared the last invaders, the Revenant was scarred but still fighting. Vega reported from the port flank. We've got an opening. Enemy command nodes exposed. I seized it. All strike wings, full assault, now. The final push was chaos. Hand-to-hand aboard Jarn constructs. Point-blank ship-to-ship engagements. No room for finesse. Just raw, savage war. When the enemy command node finally collapsed, the swarm broke. Not instantly, Banthort, but enough. They began to falter. Retreat. I stood on the battered bridge of the Revenant, blood on my armor, watching the Jarn forces scatter. We'd won, at a cost. Nearly half our fleet lost, thousands dead, but we'd done it. We'd hit them. We'd hurt them. And for the first time, the Jarn were the ones retreating. Later, in the debrief, Grant's message came through. You did the impossible, Strain. Earth owes you all. But I wasn't celebrating. Vega sat beside me in the medbay, patching up burns. This won't stop them, she said quietly. I nodded. But it bought us time. Time to rebuild. Time to prepare for the next wave. Time for Earth to prove that we would not break. And across the fractured galaxy, the Council watched in fear, because Earth had done what no one else dared. We'd taken the war to the monsters, and we were just getting started. 3 days after the counterstrike, the galaxy started to fracture. Word of our assault on the Jarn hives spread faster than we could control it. We hadn't broadcast it. We hadn't needed to. The wreckage told its own story. The dead hive moon still drifted in the void, a blackened scar visible on any long-range scope. Dozens of Terran hulls burned with it, but the message was clear. Earth fights, and Earth wins, and the Council hated us for it. The first communiques came through Bastion's deep relays. Not congratulations, not offers of aid, demands. The Draxian High Consul Jernai, the same snake who'd sent fleets to occupy Sul, now dared to lecture us. Earth's unilateral aggression destabilizes the entire galactic order. We demand an immediate ceasefire and joint governance of further anti-Charan operations. I read the message in silence, jaw clenched. Vega stood nearby, arms folded, her eyes dark with fury. Joint governance, she spat. They mean control. I nodded grimly. They want to leash us again, or break us trying. High Command met in emergency session. The holotable showed it all. Fractured alliances, collapsing trade lanes, council factions openly blaming each other. And through it all, Earth's name rising like a curse on alien lips. Renar summed it up best. We're winning battles, he said, voice dry. But we're losing the narrative. The Council couldn't stand that Earth had succeeded where they'd failed. Worse, some outer worlds were now looking to us, not the Council, for protection. And the inner faction saw the danger. If Earth became a symbol of resistance, their whole rotten empire would collapse. Grant looked to me. "Your assessment, Strain?" I didn't hesitate. "We have to force the issue, hit them politically, while they're off balance." The room was silent a moment. Then Holt grinned. "How?" I leaned over the table, pointing to the fractured comm nets. "We broadcast it, an unfiltered record, of our battle at the Hive, of Terran ships fighting and bleeding where the Council wouldn't go, of Sharn monstrosities falling under human guns, raw, bloody, real." "Let the galaxy see," I said coldly. "Let them choose who they believe in." Grant gave the order that same hour. Operation Iron Truth went live. Renner's intelligence teams flooded the comnets with footage. Not polished propaganda, but the brutal reality of the war. Terran Marines fighting in the dark. Sharn Leviathans burning. Orbital shots of the Hive moon breaking apart. And one final clip. Me, standing bloodstained on the Revenant's bridge, stating it plain. "Earth will not submit. Earth will not flee. We fight for our own, and any who stand against us will fall." The effect was immediate. Across the Council worlds, fractures deepened. Some factions howled for war, others hesitated, their citizens asking why Earth had done what no one else dared. And in the frontier? Uprisings. Outer colonies long abandoned to Charn raids now saw a new path. Alliance with Earth. But success bred new enemies. 2 days after the broadcast, a Terran scout ship intercepted a Council fleet staging in the Theta Draconis system. Not Sharn hunters. A strike force. Headed for Sol. A full war fleet, over 100 capital ships, drawn from multiple Council factions. Not an open declaration of war, a deniable enforcement mission. The Council still played its old games, but this time Earth would play none. Grant recalled me to Bastion. "You'll lead the defense," he said flatly, "and the message must be clear." I understood. This wasn't just about survival, it was about breaking the Council's will to fight. We scrambled every remaining fleet. Revenant barely had time for emergency repairs before burning out of Sol orbit again. Vega stood beside me in the launch bay, her armor still scorched from the Hive battles. "They won't stop," she said quietly. I nodded. "Then we finish it." The Battle of Theta Draconis was a bloodbath from the first shot. The Council ships expected an easy enforcement action, Earth isolated, still licking wounds. They found an apex predator waiting. Revenant led a full strike wing, backed by Mars dreadnoughts, lunar stealth corvettes, and a new AI war fleet fresh from the secret yards at Titan. Terran fleets no longer fought like Council armadas. No parades, no set-piece engagements, just pure, ruthless, asymmetrical warfare. Sovereign unleashed cyber attacks that turned half the Council's targeting nets to garbage. Drone waves harassed their flanks while fast attack wings cut supply ships to pieces. And when they tried to form a core battle group, we hit it with a kinetic strike, an asteroid fragment, mass driver launched at near light speed. The heart of the Council fleet burned. I led the ground assault on their forward command carrier myself. No quarter. By the time we breached the bridge, the Council admirals lay dead, some from our guns, others by their own hands. Vega stood over the Council fleetmaster's corpse, eyes cold. "That's one message they'll understand." I nodded. "Not the last." Back in Sol space, the political fallout exploded. Council media called us monsters, tyrants, war criminals. But in the outer worlds, Earth's banner now flew over dozens of independent colonies. The Terran Accord was born. Not an empire, not a federation, a pact. Worlds who chose to stand with Earth, who chose to fight back. And the Jarn, for now, they had pulled back, licking wounds, But no one believed the war was over. In Bastion's war room, Grant laid it out. "We face 2 wars now," he said. "One in the shadows, against the Council. One in the dark, against the Sharn. And the future? Forged in fire." I left the chamber with Vega at my side. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she looked at me. "You think we'll survive this?" I met her gaze. "We already have." But survival wasn't enough anymore. Victory, that was the only way forward. And Earth would claim it, no matter what it cost. 2 weeks after the Battle of Theta Draconis, the galaxy stood on a knife's edge. The Sharn had retreated, but not defeated. Scout reports placed hive fleets massing beyond the Orion Spur. And the Council? Broken, bloodied, but dangerous. No longer trying to hide behind enforcement missions. Now they called it what it was. Total war. Grant's briefing on Bastion said it plain. "We face extinction on 2 fronts," he told us. "No more defensive campaigns. No more reaction." He looked straight at me. "It's time to strike at the heart. Operation Black Star. The most audacious plan ever conceived by Earth. We'd discovered it during post-battle scans of the first Sharn hive moon. A central command nexus. Not just a fleet coordination node, but a psychic relay hub. The Sharn didn't use comms like other species. They used psionic resonance, linked across light years. Take out one hive? The rest adapted. Take out the relay nexus? Cut the entire network at the root. Disorient them. Cripple their war cohesion. But the target was deep in unmapped Sharn space, far beyond Council frontiers, a place no human ship had ever returned from. A suicide mission. I volunteered. Grant didn't argue. He knew. It had to be led by someone who'd seen the enemy up close, someone willing to go all the way. And he also knew the truth. If this failed, Earth might not survive the next Sharn wave. Vega met me in the Revenant's launch bay. She was already geared up. Full black ops armor, no insignia. "You didn't think I'd stay behind?" she said. I looked at her. Last chance to walk away. The effect was immediate. Across the Council worlds, fractures deepened. Some factions howled for war, others hesitated, their citizens asking why Earth had done what no one else dared. And in the frontier? Uprisings. Outer colonies long abandoned to Sharn raids now saw a new path. Alliance with Earth. But success bred new enemies. 2 days after the broadcast, a Terran scout ship intercepted a Council fleet staging in the Theta Draconis system. Not Sharn hunters. A strike force. Headed for Sol. A full war fleet, over 100 capital ships, drawn from multiple Council factions. Not an open declaration of war, a deniable enforcement mission. The Council still played its old games, but this time Earth would play none. Grant recalled me to Bastion. "You'll lead the defense," he said flatly, "and the message must be clear." I understood. This wasn't just about survival. It was about breaking the Council's will to fight. We scrambled every remaining fleet. Revenant barely had time for emergency repairs before burning out of Sol orbit again. Vega stood beside me in the launch bay, her armor still scorched from the hive battles. "They won't stop," she said quietly. I nodded. "Then we finish it." The Battle of Theta Draconis was a bloodbath from the first shot. The Council ships expected an easy enforcement action, Earth isolated, still licking wounds. They found an apex predator waiting. Revenant led a full strike wing, backed by Mars dreadnoughts, lunar stealth corvettes, and a new AI war fleet fresh from the secret yards at Titan. Terran fleets no longer fought like Council armadas. No parades, no set-piece engagements, just pure, ruthless, asymmetrical warfare. Sovereign unleashed cyber attacks that turned half the Council's targeting nets to garbage. Drone waves harassed their flanks while fast-attack wings cut supply ships to pieces. And when they tried to form a core battle group, we hit it with a kinetic strike, an asteroid fragment, mass driver launched at near light speed. The heart of the Council fleet burned. I led the ground assault on their forward command carrier myself. No quarter. By the time we breached the bridge, the Council admirals lay dead, some from our guns, others by their own hands. Vega stood over the Council fleetmaster's corpse, eyes cold. That's one message they'll understand. I nodded. Not the last. Back in Sol space, the political fallout exploded. Council media called us monsters, tyrants, war criminals. But in the outer worlds, Earth's banner now flew over dozens of independent colonies. The Terran Accord was born. Not an empire, not a federation, a pact. Worlds who chose to stand with Earth, who chose to fight back. And the Zharn, for now, they had pulled back, licking wounds. But no one believed the war was over. In Bastion's war room, Grant laid it out. "We face two wars now," he said. "One in the shadows, against the Council. One in the dark, against the Zharn. And the future? Forged in fire." I left the chamber with Vega at my side. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she looked at me. "You think we'll survive this?" I met her gaze. "We already have." But survival wasn't enough anymore. Victory, that was the only way forward. And Earth would claim it, no matter what it cost. 2 weeks after the Battle of Theta Draconis, the galaxy stood on a knife's edge. The Zharn had retreated, but not defeated. Scout reports placed hive fleets massing beyond the Orion Spur. And the Council? Broken, bloodied, but dangerous. No longer trying to hide behind enforcement missions. Now they called it what it was. Total war. Grant's briefing on Bastion said it plain. "We face extinction on 2 fronts," he told us. "No more defensive campaigns. No more reaction." He looked straight at me. "It's time to strike at the heart. Operation Black Star. The most audacious plan ever conceived by Earth. We discovered it during post-battle scans of the first Zharn hive moon. A central command nexus. Not just a fleet coordination node, but a psychic relay hub. The Zharn didn't use comms like other species. They used psionic resonance, linked across light years. Take out one hive? The rest adapted. Take out the relay nexus? Cut the entire network at the root. Disorient them. Cripple their war cohesion. But the target was deep in unmapped Zharn space, far beyond Council frontiers, a place no human ship had ever returned from. A suicide mission. I volunteered. Grant didn't argue. He knew. It had to be led by someone who'd seen the enemy up close, someone willing to go all the way. And he also knew the truth. If this failed, Earth might not survive the next Zharn wave. Vega met me in the Revenant's launch bay. She was already geared up. Full black ops armor, no insignia. "You didn't think I'd stay behind?" she said. I looked at her. Last chance to walk away. Her smile was cold. Not a chance. I nodded. I wouldn't have stopped her anyway. The Black Fleet deployed under maximum stealth, Revenant at its heart. 4 Titan-forged stealth destroyers, 6 AI-controlled strike frigates, no support, no backup. Deep space insertion through a forbidden wormhole route, one of the old Council's most guarded secrets, now torn open by Earth's cyber divisions. We were going where even the Council's worst nightmares didn't dare. 4 days in FTL transit. No contact, no updates. Just the hum of engines and the cold silence of space. The crew knew what this was. No speeches, no grand oaths, just a grim determination. Vega and I spent those days poring over the latest Zharn intel, movement patterns, structural weaknesses, hive architecture. Our best hope was to breach the nexus and detonate an antimatter charge directly in its core. One shot, One chance. On the 5th day, we dropped out of FTL. Into hell. The Nexus was real, a vast, impossible structure, part living, part machine, wrapped around a dying neutron star. Its gravity bent space itself. Its organic arms reached out like a spider in the dark. And all around it, Jarn war fleets. Thousands of ships. We were ants walking into a dragon's lair. Sovereign immediately began jamming enemy scans. Multiple contacts, the AI reported. Detection imminent. I keyed the fleet communication. All ships, Phase 1 assault. Maximum speed. No fallback. The Revenant led the charge. We punched through the first screening fleet with sheer velocity. Railguns blazing. Plasma torpedoes tearing into the enemy. But the Jarn adapted fast. Organic tendrils lashed through space, trying to ensnare us. Living drones swarmed us like hornets. 2 of the stealth destroyers went dark in minutes, consumed in explosions of green-black energy. Still, we pressed in. Core target lock acquired, Sovereign reported. I looked at Vega. Time to finish this. We deployed a ground strike team, Revenant's elite Marines, reinforced with cyber-augmented heavy troopers. Vega led point. I followed. We breached the Nexus surface through a vent tunnel, moving fast, weapons hot. Every step inside was worse than the worst hives we'd seen. Organic walls, living tech. Psionic waves that clawed at your mind. Half the first squad went down to psychic shock, their brains fried in seconds. But we kept moving. We weren't here to survive. We were here to kill. The core chamber was a nightmare made flesh. A vast psionic brain, pulsing with light, tendrils connecting it to the hive network. I set the antimatter charge. Vega covered me, gunning down wave after wave of Jarn defenders. As I keyed the final arming sequence, a shadow loomed. A Jarn prime warform, something I'd only seen in dark reports, thought was a myth. 12 meters tall, bladed limbs. Psionic aura strong enough to stagger even through my suit. It moved fast. Too fast. The fight was brutal. Pulse rounds barely slowed it. Blades carved through my armor. I went down, hard, ribs shattering. But before it could finish the kill, Vega hit it full force. A plasma blade through its core. A point-blank grenade to the skull. She dragged me clear as the charge hit final countdown. Time to go, she said flatly. We barely made it back to the extraction point. Sovereign brought the Revenant in on a suicidal dive, cutting through Charn flak with sheer AI precision. The antimatter charge detonated as we jumped to FTL. A psychic scream echoed across space. The Nexus collapsed. Back in Sol, the effects were immediate. Charn fleets across the front fragmented, coordination broken, hive minds reeling. Dozens of raids failed. Entire fleets went dormant. Earth had bought breathing room, but the cost? Only 4 ships of the Black Fleet returned. Revenant was a wreck. And me? Half my ribs crushed. Internal bleeding. Nerve damage. But I lived. Vega visited me in the medbay. She looked as battered as I felt. Council's offering peace talks now, she said bitterly. Of course they were. Earth had faced the monsters, and survived. And now the Council wanted to crawl back in control. Grant visited next. He looked at me for a long time. You saved us, he said simply. I shook my head. Bought time, that's all. He nodded. And time is all we need. Because now, Earth would build, Earth would prepare, Earth would lead. No more council lies, no more chains. The galaxy had changed, forever. And if the Jarn came again, we would meet them, on our terms. Because Earth had learned the truth in blood. We fight, we endure, we win.